Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. How you doing, everyone? I hope this finds you in good health and secure. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being here, liking, subscribing. It's Bodhisattva work, right? When you experience Buddhaness, you've been chanting for a little while, you're really focused on Myoho, on the Mandala, all your thoughts about daily events, attachments, possessions, desires, all of that has melted away and you're just focused. And the only thing on your mind is Buddhaness, clarity, experience, the momentum of my life. The momentum of my life is the momentum of life itself, right? That grand, huge experience that is the process of life happening moment to moment, instantiating from potential that you can tap into from your own freight train of karma into the universal karma, right? Energy plus action. Everything that is manifest through a process we identify as Buddhists as karma. Karma is the energy of formation, which instantiates, abides for a little while, and dissolves. Constantly, moment to moment, instantiating and dissolving. We tend to be linear about these things because we think of things superficially. But I want to talk about two things today. We've been in a portion of the opening of the eyes that confounds a lot of people. So I want to approach it very simply in another direction, give you another way to maybe access this dividing line, this critical point that Shakyamuni over and over again tried to make. It's in the Lotus Sutra. Tendai points it out. Dengyo, Miaolo, and now Nichiren quoting all of them. And himself talking about those Buddhists, not just ignorant people, ignorant of Buddhism, but practicing Buddhists, maybe for many years. And this is going to come back to attitude and intent. You watch. When you awaken in the morning, you wake up. You become conscious of the activity of life, right? Is it your contention when you awake in the morning that awakened state never existed anywhere, anytime else other than when you awaken? And I don't mean explicitly, but I mean, is that your assumption? That while you slept, unconscious, let's just go with the language, that the entire universe just stopped waiting on you to wake up in the morning? I hope you're laughing or twisting your head or wondering what the hell I'm talking about right now. Because that thought, that statement, pretty ridiculous, isn't it? Maybe 10,000 years ago, that might have crossed a primitive mind. I don't know. I don't even want to say that because it sounds so self-absorbed, doesn't it? And yet, in the teachings of Buddhaness, the attachment, the avarice for ownership of anything, no matter how many ways Shakyamuni described this, I just got an email, a quotation from some document of unknown origin. This mysticism, this misinterpretation, this shallow, without context quotations of Shakyamuni said, Siddhartha said. This total confusion about existing, non-existing, neither, and both is just, for some reason, when people practice certain, and these are certain sects of Buddhism as well, even within a Nichiren doctrine, there's this idea that when one attains this aha moment, the chanting to their Butsudan, to their Gohonzon, to their Gohonzon mind via the mandala, that when they sense Buddha, that it's somehow their Buddha, that it's a personal experience that's unique to them. And I know that the translations, the language and stuff might lead you to believe that, might lead you to think that because I'm in this world, which I've already blown that idea apart, we're never in a world. We're transmigrating through 3,000 of them in every single thought moment, which can't even measure how brief that is. We're constantly, fluidly, because potential has no resting point, right? It just keeps sparking along, instantiating the stuff of life. So, like saying when you awaken in the morning that you own awakening, or that it is your awakening, it may be your experience of awakening. So now let's develop a little more language around this so we understand what we're really saying. That when we attain, awaken Buddhaness or Buddha, we experience, our identity, our samsaric karmic freight train, our Gohonzon mind, opens to experience Buddhaness via our attainment, our awakening. But what we awaken to in the morning or our first breath, we don't create oxygen from our first breath. The oxygen's been there all along. We just awaken to be aware of the experience of the oxygen, yeah? It's the same with Buddha. It's always there, because what is Buddha? The awareness of the engine of life, the totality of everything that is manifesting in the universe, let alone in your own body. Yes, you're having a local vantage point of it, but it doesn't belong to you. In fact, it'd be more accurate to say you belong to it, because it's just witnessing the process of which you are instantiated, moment to moment to moment to moment to moment. Now, we've talked about this in so many ways, so many times. You may be saying, yes, I understand. You've talked about this before. But I bring it up again because this is the exact distinction that the previous couple of videos, this part of the opening of the eyes, the quotations from these sutras, the Lotus Sutra, is identifying. That those Buddhists who in their attitude think themselves to be superior to others because they claim some kind of an ownership of Buddha. I've experienced, I'm an arhat. I've established, I'm Bob Buddha. We're all Buddhas. Like it's an individual thing. They're missing it. They've missed the teaching. Think about it. Where does the compassion of Buddhism come from? Not from identifying one's superiority. It comes from identifying how the only thing that's vaulted or approaches that word superior is the insight that everything is the same. Amazing instantiations in every variety imaginable and beyond from potential. We're all the same potential, expressed in innumerable, right? Innumerable meanings sutra. That's what it's about. That we're all just sparks, but when looked at closely, there are individuating circumstances and insights and experiences of the same thing. The formations of potential. That's the great awakening of Buddhaness, is that all the borders that identify, locate, separate, just evaporate. That's such a critical point of Shakyamuni's teachings, of Buddhaness, what the whole point is. That to miss it is to become a very counterproductive person. No matter how many years you've studied Buddhism, if you haven't made that critical shift, then the people who come to you who want to learn about Buddhism, the people you instruct in your polluted idea of what attaining Buddhahood is, you may give them a lot of the same words, a lot of the same ideas, and hopefully with their insights they'll see right beyond you. But you're an obstacle. I'm not saying you personally don't, language, right? But you see what I'm saying? This is why attitude and intent. What are you thinking when you're not invoking your Buddhaness? What do you enter into your relationship with your mandala with? The idea that you will manifest a superior state, or that you will experience a state which is equanimous, beneath, within, above, around, the state of life. See, it'd be more accurate to see our samsaric life as being underwater. And that when we connect with Buddha, we rise above the surface of the ocean and we partake of air that is life, not ours, not particular to us. Our experience to get there is particular to us, yes. This is why the confusion, right? But the attainment of Buddha, the attainment of enlightenment, it's not local, nor is the universe. We have a vantage point, yes. Right? So I thought I would make that in a different way, talk about this point, because we're in the midst of it in this Go show. And I can hear as I read the rhetoric here, the translations, that even the translator wasn't quite grasping it. It's there. Now that we've talked about it as we have before, I'm sure you see it. But it's elusive, right? You can miss it very easily. Many do. Namo Myo Renge Kyo. And then there's this thing about time, which works into this. We talk about, and you've all heard me talk about this before too. Remember our old high school geometry classes when we defined what is a line and what is a point. And as many times as we'll go over the definitions of those terms, people will walk out of that on that same day in that same class and totally screw it up. And it's a fallacy of language. So it's no wonder, again, this language problem. We define with language, a line is the shortest distance between 2 points. Okay, great, got a definition. So when I draw a line, no. See, you missed it. You don't draw a line. Nobody draws a line. I'm an artist. Ask me what a line is. For that matter, what's a point? Can you see a point? Can you make a point? Can you draw a point? Sure I can, Sylvain. Give me a pencil. Boom, there's a point. No, that's not a point. That's a dot. Oh gosh, now you're mincing words. No, listen. You ever taken a magnifying glass to a magazine? I know, not many magazines in the world anymore. Or newsprint, a really good example for this illustration. Huh? You ever heard the term, it's been a long time since our computer printers were dot matrix. Most of you, many of you, may never have heard that term before. Many of you also, my age in our Sangha, certainly will remember dot matrix. But look at a newspaper or magazine even with a magnifying glass. Really get in there. And you'll see that what appears so smooth and linear, like text for crying out loud, you go in on that and you'll see not only does it break apart into dots, but the dots are different sizes, so they can make smoother curves. You back away and you see a nice straight line or curve, but you get in close, it's dots. Dots. Now, if you have a good enough magnifying glass, maybe a microscope, go into that dot, any one of them, pick a dot, and now go into that. Oh my goodness, that dot is made of thousands of other dots. At what point have you reached the fundamental constructor of those variegated dots? But here's the point. A point is a location. It's a coordinate. It's an XYZ. It's a position. An elusive position. Right? You can't make a dot. You can only reference, a point. You can only reference a point. You can say that there's a dot in the vicinity of this point, but actually the dot would represent infinite amount of points. How much can you divide 1 until you get to 0? You'll never get to 0, right? You remember this now from geometry? So a line, the shortest distance between 2 locations, simply is an illustration, an idea of measurement. From this point to this point, there is a finite distance that is the shortest. But you could go from this point to infinity until you run into this other point and have a line, a distance you couldn't even describe with numbers. But see, with our samsaric, quickly, we need to own line. Yeah, I've got one. It's mine. It's my line. I see the line. I should have a different word for it, but it's confusing, isn't it? But this is like time. Right? I put my hand here. You see my hand, and you see my face. Sorry. But if you dig down deep enough, you're seeing my hand long before you see my face. In fact, the illusion that you see my hand and my face at the same time is incorrect. You're seeing my face as it was or is at a different time than you're seeing my hand. Because there's a space, a measurement of time between my... Now, it's tiny, of course, grant you, but it's actual. But when we go through daily life, we don't see things that way, do we? It's the same way with the study of Buddhism, with enlightenment, with everything we experience. We live in an illusion of things being static, permanent. That gives us comfort because we build up a big mud pile of support for this identity we claim. Except that you know as well as I do, one little event, time, point, can shatter that whole identity and put you on a different path, right? So a big part of our awakening in our Buddhist practice becomes our ability to, in a moment's thought, relinquish our stranglehold on what we have thought, identified with, so that we can experience in this moment what is actual. And that isn't unique to you or me or them. It is the fundamental state of activity that is energy becoming, and our awareness of it, without the garbage of all these structures, the database, the warehouse of identifying that we've created in samsara. I hope this is clicking. With all of that, let's read a little bit more Namo Myo Renge Kyo of the opening of the eyes. Nichiren continues. In the Buddha's successor sutra, the Buddha is recorded as saying, and I like the way that's worded. It's the first time I've heard that wording, but it's the most appropriate I've heard so far. Because Buddhism, Shakyamuni, Siddhartha if you like, but Shakyamuni respects his accomplishment. The great sage of the Shakya clan, Shakyamuni, taught and had his teaching spread via word of mouth in the language that was comfortable to the region he was in. Because immeasurable meanings. Everyone will come to this their own way. Everyone wakes up in the morning their own way. But what they become aware of, though it may be tainted by their garbage of karma that they've accumulated, the actual event of being never changes. It's the perception, the experience of it that changes, that is altered. You've got to keep that in mind. Buddha is Buddha is Buddha is Buddha. And so he writes here, the Buddha is recorded as saying, that's accurate. Somebody at a later date took all those memorized verses and sermons and translated them, transcripted them to paper, albeit in their own languages. So there we are, right off the bat. There's going to be subtleties. There's going to be biases. Humans, yeah? Quote, after my passing, during the 1,000 years of the former day of the law, there will be 24 persons in succession who will spread abroad the correct teachings as I have taught them, end quote. There's a lot in that. That's a mouthful. Mahakashyapa and Ananda were contemporaries of the Buddha, and so we will pass them over. This is Nichiren talking. They were alive in his day, so they were translating this stuff from their own memory and memorization and repetition, yeah? So we won't count them among the 24 in the future 1,000 years after I'm passed, extinct, because they're contemporaries. But 100 years later, there was a monk, Parshva. 600 years later, Bodhisattva Ashvaghosha, right? We've read about these people, personages, or people. And 700 years later, Bodhisattva Nagarjuna, along with others, all appearing just as the prophecy had said they would. Obviously, the words of Shakyamuni were much more voluminous, but Nichiren is pointing to, you remember this section of his teaching, when he brought up that in the 1,000 years after, or the first 500 and the second 500-year period after my extinction, this will happen, these people, this will develop amongst the people. People will continue to evolve. They will need more clarification at this point, and this point, and this point. Shakyamuni knew this was going to happen, so he was talking about it. And Nichiren is pointing to actual bodhisattvas, scholars, who bore out that insight of Shakyamuni's. If so, how would the prophecy in the encouraging devotion chapter of the Lotus Sutra be in vain? In other words, you can see from history that what Shakyamuni said was going to occur, had to occur, actually did occur. Then why would the prophecy in the Lotus Sutra, or his words of insight into 2,500 years after he's passed away, be any different? Wouldn't you expect them to also manifest? Right? If this prophecy were a variance with the truth, then the whole Lotus Sutra would be at variance with the truth. I mean, if you can't trust or find evidence for his predictions in the Lotus Sutra, then maybe the whole Lotus Sutra is also not hitting the mark. I mean, right? Logic dictates. Then the predictions that Shariputra will in the future become a thus come one flower glow and Mahakashyapa will become the thus come one light bright. I can't say that without thinking of that 70s toy. Would all be mere lies. In other words, you couldn't depend on those words. Those predictions that they would in the future attain enlightenment would have been just words. They wouldn't have had any merit, any based in any truth. Although we've seen for the last 3,000 words that the words of every one of his teachings have manifested. So we have a high degree of confidence. That's what Nichiren is saying, yeah? In that case, the teachings put forward in the sutras that preceded the Lotus Sutra would be absolutely correct, and the voice hearers, the Shravakas, would be destined never to achieve Buddhahood, right? Because Hinayana. they've scorched the seeds. They'll never attain enlightenment. Why practice? If it were true that one should give alms to a dog or a fox before giving them to a voice hearer, such as Ananda, then where would we stand? Now, you know he's quoting earlier sutras, right? Oh, my neck. Sorry. The passage from the Encouraging Devotion chapter mentions 3 groups of people, saying, first, that, quote, there will be many ignorant people, end quote. Well, not much of a prediction, right? That's just humanity. That's our kind of our default state, right? Samsara. Second, that in that evil age there will be monks. Remember where he begins that, again, evil. What he's talking about is what I opened this video with. Monks that think they know and have achieved for themselves something that others cannot achieve, but will teach them so they can try. And maybe, if you work hard enough, you can achieve your own. See this possession problem? That's what's evil. It's not evil, it's misguided. And because it's misguided, we're talking about enlightenment here, it's super problematic, yeah? So those monks, and referring to, thirdly, to monks wearing clothing of patched rags, he's identifying monks who are really good at playing the role of being beyond, right? Pratyeka Buddhas, arhats. Oh, arhats. Like they've attained something that's unattainable to the masses. Again, this idea that what's achieved with Buddhist study is some kind of a singular, like a sainthood or something. Do you see what I'm saying? It's very egocentric. And that's not the truth at all. We all have Buddha. We all are of Buddha, because Buddha is the perception of what? The engine of life. Everything within the universe is a manifestation of this process we call life. Life isn't unique to planet Earth. We have a unique form of it here and a unique opportunity here. But the universe is life. If we can find or look for some other forms of life that might mirror or seem closer or adjacent to the way we've manifested potential here on Earth, the more we look, the more special and incredibly precious we learn that our opportunity is. That's amazing. But to think that we're the only life form in the universe, that's beyond arrogance, isn't it? And this is the very same stumbling block that Shakyamuni is trying to identify here. And what's the simplest statement you can say to adjust your mind to this problem, to become aware, to guide you? Follow the law, not the person. The moment you find yourself indulging, and it may not be the person's fault, because it's an authoritarian mindset. We like to put the responsibility on others. It somehow makes us feel less criticized, less critical about ourselves. We hate criticizing ourselves. But why not jump right over that fence to manifesting yourself fully, so that criticism isn't even an issue. It just falls away. There is nothing to criticize. It's the ego. Always. Me, 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 me. The first category of ignorant people are the important lay believers who support monks in the second and third categories. Lay believers. So in the ignorant people, he's not talking about non-Buddhists, though we could include them for the sake of our discussion. But he's saying, even if you're born into Buddhism and you're practicing, or your parents practice, or whatever, you're born into a Buddhist society, that doesn't mean you understand Buddhism or how to access that unique insight in your mind that's there waiting for you to get it. While in the meantime, you're sticking alphabet blocks in your mouth and salivating and looking at your mom and your dad and making faces as a baby, obviously. Growing up to do the same thing with everything. What's that taste like? What's that sound like? What's that like? Oh, I can have that. I can have this. I don't like that. Everything's about identification. That's samsara. It takes a great deal of maturity for a human organism to develop, emerge a mind, a witness of greater, more and more complex realizations of life, how life works. Not just politics, not just society, not just clocks and food, the necessities, the samsaric reality. But what is life? At some point, the hole inside of you that's surrounded by all this ownership, it's not being fed. Something's missing. That aha of, oh, I'm just a thread on the end of a spoke, on the end of a very long, attached to a hub, attached to a wheel. I am part of, made by, integral with the entire cycle of life in every single moment. There's no such thing as permanent, right? We permanent marker, permanent, this line is permanent. No, it's not. You can blow that apart in 10 seconds. Do you know how fast the Earth is spinning and orbiting the sun and hurtling through the Milky Way as the Milky Way itself is moving at incredible speed? You think it's local? You think it's permanent? It's already gone. See this time thing we fool ourselves with all the time? Time is happening moment to moment to moment, and this moment is different than the last. Nothing holds. Everything is just a spray of sparks happening under certain tendencies and conditions with an arc of arising, abiding, and going away. Done. Yeah. It's like a rainbow. It's beautiful while it lasts. But if it was there all the time, every day, it'd just be another, oh, yeah, rainbow. Wouldn't be special at all. That's how fickle we are about what we perceive as permanent and non-permanent. Well, just understand your life is constantly moving. So if permanence is your thing, you're going to suffer. If momentum and minuteness, temporariness is of preciousness or value to you, there's nothing more precious than the moment-to-moment instantiation of life potential. That's where we're trying to keep our awareness, our minds, right? Accordingly, the great teacher Miao Lo, commenting on the people in the first group, says they represent the arrogance and presumption of lay people. So now you understand why he says arrogance and presumption. He's not just saying everybody's an asshole, right? He's saying our tendencies as human beings to simplify the world into permanence, ownership, collections of identity is actuality. When you progress, you will find, just like when you look back at your teenage years and you think, oh, man, was that really me? Was I really that deluded? How did I think those things? Right? As our mind develops, we look back upon assumptions that we used to hold as concrete, and we think, man, that's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Please let's not talk about that time. Oof. I can't believe that was me. Can't even understand how I thought to think that way. Right? That's what Miao Lo is saying. The people in the first group that are just casually aware of Buddhism and attach like they do everything else, right? Labels, database. I have achieved this. This is mine. I'm in this world, that world. My home base is, all of that rhetoric of identification. It really is the height of ego. It's arrogant. It just is. But that arrogance is born of ignorance. Don't know any better. And it's based on a bunch of presumptions, right? Mine. Biggest presumption. And Tung Chun says that they will appeal to the government authorities slandering the law and its practitioners. Right? So that's a reference to those people that would identify Shakyamuni, Nichiren, Tendai, anybody, a neighbor who goes to the authorities with the power and pleads their case to gain advantage. Oh, that guy, he has wild parties, and I see people going in and out there all the time, and I'm sure they're selling drugs. And the cops, oh, we can go make some points. Let's go make a bust. And if they find something, they find something. And it goes into their book, and, oh, yep, check, oh, that's happening over there. Or nothing's happening, but every one of your friends at your party who was just celebrating a birthday or whatever just had to go through the humiliation and the disruption and the implied accusation of all this power play, and your neighbor is going, I win. Right? What kind of person does that? Presumption, arrogance. Yeah. It's humanity, yes? So why would it be different in the history of Buddhism? Here it is. Concerning the second group of enemies of the Lotus Sutra, enemies, why? I've already described the enemies. They are obstacles, tremendous obstacles, because they put a detour in the road and send you the wrong way. And they do so based on their arrogance. They're monks. They're more educated than the ignorant lay people, but they still have self, arrogance, ego, constructed on more scholarship, but that doesn't mean they get it, yeah? And they become teachers to help misguide those lay people. It compounds itself. So, concerning the second group of enemies of the Lotus Sutra, the sutra says, in that evil age there will be monks with perverse wisdom. It'll be wisdom, why? Because there's a lot of scholarship in it, but it'll be perverted by their self-agenda. And hearts that are fawning and crooked, who will suppose they have attained what they have not attained, or at least publicize it that way, being proud and boastful in heart. And there's the key. However, this translation might be biased, the kernel of truth is in there. That ultimately, even though they're educated, they're motivated by ego. Similarly, the Nirvana Sutra says, quote, in that age there will be evil monks, so on and so forth. These evil men will read and recite the sutra. Yeah, they'll know the words. But they will ignore and put aside the profound and vital principles that the thus come one has expounded in it, end quote. Boom. The law, the meaning. Instead, they will hang their hat on the words because words are mutable. I can take the words of this sutra and I can make them mean blah, 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 and off they go to validate what they want. And you might say, well, isn't that what you're doing, Sylvain? I hope that's not what you're saying. I hope that you know by now, if you've watched any amount of these videos, over 1,000 of them now, been putting these up for years, that what I'm doing is sharing with you a digging, a forging, what I think like CSI, right? What do they call that? A forensic examination of many books, many sutras, the 84,000 teachings, yes? To cull meaning from them. And the meaning and the insights that I've gotten over the years, they add up. At some points in my practice, I discovered that I had to modify what I thought the meaning was by virtue of more study. I honed it in. It became clearer and clearer. And so that's all I'm doing, right? I'm sharing my excavation of meaning that seems to be, as Nichiren, blindingly obvious, right? But I'm not discussing these things with you to say, and this is why you should send money to my church and buy me an aeroplane so I can fly the world and tell as many people as possible how right I am. Huh? Do you ever hear any kind of rhetoric like that out of me? It certainly isn't my intent. So please, let's understand all of us are capable of making mistakes and misspeaking from time to time. But that's why this is why I'm spending so much time on this part of the opening of the eyes, because this part of the Gosho and this part of the teachings of Shakyamuni, it's very, very important. But oddly, as important as it is, it's pointing to a very subtle aspect of the way we think. Again, it's attitude and intent, yeah? The words might be the same, but what is the attitude? What is the intent? This is why I've admonished so many of us that when we chant to our mandala, we don't bring our desires to the mandala. The desires is exactly what we're trying to get rid of, or at least our attachment to the desires, yes? The only thing, and I quote Nichiren again, single-mindedly seek Buddha. That's the only thing you should be focused on when you chant the Daimoku. Makes perfect sense, because if you can only but attain Buddha, everything else becomes just clear, obvious, nurturing, enjoyable. There is no worry about stuff. That's distraction. Why bring it to your daimoku? Besides, if your daimoku is serious, I mean, if you really focus, characters myoho, chant with all of your might, mental might, heart might, intent, whatever you think you brought to the Butsuran, to your Gohonzon mind, it's just, it's not going to stay there long anyway. And if it does, then you're stubbornly hanging on to your ego. You need to stop doing that. It's not advancing you in your practice. All right. Oops, I need to wrap this up here. Great concentration and insight, the Tendai document, yeah? Quote, if one lacks strong resolve in the Lotus Sutra, one will object that it pertains to the lofty realm of the sages, something far beyond the capacity of one's own wisdom to comprehend. If one lacks wisdom, one will become puffed up with arrogance and will claim to be the equal of the Buddha. Like, I'm just like Shakyamuni. Do you see what? Can you not hear the ego in that statement? Even though it's unsaid, I have attained the same level of enlightenment as Shakyamuni Buddha. Who cares? Shakyamuni Buddha is dead. He's been dead 3,000 years. Why not just awaken to Buddha? Because Shakyamuni wasn't Buddha. He was almost stoned to death. Is that what you've accomplished? Do you see the ridiculousness of that kind of thinking? And yet, this is the samsaric identifying obsession of labels, identity, ownership. You haven't escaped anything. Liberation. Remember, that's the goal. From the Four Noble Truths, liberation, the cessation of the attachments, the avarice, the constant craving. Why not have it all without craving? Because it's already all here. It's just manifesting. What are you craving for? Be in it. Buddha. Release your warehouse of attachments and identification. All that you are potential to be can instantiate. The only thing keeping you from realizing that is your attachments, your obsessions. Let it go. Namo Myo Renge Kyo. Sometimes I don't even, it's like I want to create a new language. Like that would be any better, right? Please focus your attention, your mind on Buddhaness. Keep that resolve, that confidence, that it's already, you are in it, within it, of it. You just need to become aware of it. Be in it instead of around it and under it, and constructing all this other stuff. Just be in Buddha. Namo Myo Renge Kyo. Single-mindedly, yeah? Congratulations on your efforts, your practice. It's formidable. It's profound. That alone should give you great confidence, right? Take care of your health. Because without this apparatus, we don't have the emergent mind to be able to have the strength, the fortitude of spirit, of conviction, of resolve. It takes a lot of energy. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The notifications bell if that helps you. I need alarms and reminders all the time or I'll forget my own name. Right? Enjoy every moment of your life that you can. Be aware that every moment is for you. Okay? Download the ebooks, the free material on Threefold Lotus. Buy books, buy a Nichiren inscribed digital copy of a Nichiren inscribed mandala, so that there are no obstacles, no doubts that you're practicing Nichiren's doctrine of Shakyamuni's Lotus Sutra, the method of self-enlightenment. Yeah, Namo Myo Renge Kyo. Thank you. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.
Baby, you give me